we said that we're going to continue with what our expectation is in the Feast of Sukkot, in our hope for restoration. What really is our expectation? What really is our expectation? We've been told that the Feast of Tabernacle reminds us of the past. It reminds us of where we are now, present. It also foreshadows future. What is coming in the future? What we are expected to know from the past, so that the present, this time we are, will be able to picture what is happening around us, be able to understand what is going on, so that we will not be taken unawares, because knowledge is power. If you don't know, even one's environment may consume it. Even when the plottings in the environment is, escalating, the individual may not know because he is not watching out. One of the key, word in the celebration of Sukkot is watch, watch. Old Testament says watch. New Testament says watch. Even Yeshua says pray. Watch and pray. It is, something that we have to do every day. But during this particular time, we are commanded to evermore watch and pray. How do you watch? The time to study. And we are going to look at what happened to children of Judah when they returned to Jerusalem from Babylon. How, watching helped them discover the celebration of this particular feast. So our expectation is that Sunday we might be in position or in situation will be vulnerable to attack. We are in the world that doesn't like us because we are not like them. We are separated from them. But the thing is, do we even know? Do we have idea that those who call upon the name of Yahweh are special breed? And they are not loved, they are not liked. They didn't like our master, our Messiah. How would they like you? How would they love you? Look at Isaiah 53. Read it. The prophet Isaiah said it clearly that they didn't like him. They didn't like our master. They didn't like him. He has not the kind of things, whether the facial, expression or feature or charisma that the world love or like that is found in him. He's a special breed. So with his character, with his moral life, with the way he carry himself, the way he comport himself, the way he believed in his father, God doesn't go that way. They don't like it even. So since he is our living example, we must be like him. They wouldn't like us because we follow after the footsteps of our master. So we should continue to have that expectation that Yahweh is with us as he promised us. No matter where we find ourselves, no matter where we are, Yahweh is with us. So our expectation should be high. In our expectation, our faith should be the engineering power, what powers us continually. He is with us, and he is our salvation. Ultimately, salvation is the key. Israel shall be saved. Romans chapter 11. Apostle Paul mentioned or said, when the Gentile Christianity were, shouting, it is their own. Israelites have been, put down because they rejected the Messiah. They are now the owner of Messiah. They are now the people that are called to fulfill the promise of Abraham and other. But Apostle Paul said, no, Israelites are still there. No matter what they had done, he said some part of them, he used olive tree, to capture Israel. Israel as a nation was depicted as an olive tree. He said in that olive tree, some branch of it got corrupted, and Yahweh has to take them away. So don't because of those that we are cut off or cut down, and you say, oh, we have taken over because Israelites have been cut off. Israel is not cut off. Israel is still there. He said they were grafted in to fill the areas or the portion of the olive tree that was cut off. So being grafted doesn't give them the right to claim that they have taken the ownership of the choosing race of Yahweh. And warn them on Sunday, though Israelites may be sleeping, they will wake up again and they will be saved. All believers, all Israelites that are believers, they'll be saved. And that includes the Gentile. I think by that administration of Apostle Paul in Romans chapter 11, most of them understood, though many never agree with Apostle Paul, because even today in Christendom, they feel that Israelites are no longer in existence. They feel that they are Israelites. The people they reckon, though, as Israelites are the Jews that are there today in Jerusalem and all that. But are they the true Israelite Jews? Bible talk about the Escanas, the children of Escanas in Genesis chapter 10 and 11. Who are they? They were Gentiles who came in, after Israelites were scattered everywhere, and they took over the place. And some of the children of Edomites who want to claim the land of Israel. I mean, they did. They claimed the land of Israel. But Yahweh says he has a day, a time to deal with them. So our expectation is that Sunday Israelites will be restored into their land. They will be saved. They will not be continually rejected or kicked out from the face of Yahweh or rejected forever. Now, what is our anticipation in this time or period of Feast of Shelter or Tabernacles? Now, Feast of Tabernacles is dress rehearsal for a time when nations of the world, will be thinking to gather, against them to rid them of. Now, Israelites on their own, by the Spirit of Yahweh, will quicken them, will help Israelites, quicken them to also gather, and that will be at the time of trouble, time of Jacob's trouble. Time of Jacob's trouble is not a blissful time. It's not a joy time. It's not a time that is palatable. The time when Israelites be fighting for their lives, for survival, and Yahweh will protect them. That is shelter. That is covering. Promise He will shelter them. So this time around, appointed time, we are doing what is called dress rehearsal every year. And that's why he always says, keep this particular time, appointed time, as period or time of memorial. You have to do what He prescribed so that you keep on with His presence, because He never ceases dwelling with Israel. Yahweh never ceases dwelling with Israel. Now, we have looked at Psalm 118, where in this particular time is a popular, psalm that remind Israel who they are, the relationship they have with Yahweh. Ordinarily, how they will have been chopped off by the world, by the enemies around them. I mean, when you read that psalm, find time on your own, read it verse by verse. In fact, word for word, you will understand the import of that particular psalm, what it's offering, what Yahweh is speaking, what He's telling us. That without Him, we go nowhere. Enemy will just catch us up and exterminate us. But deeply, because Yahweh is our covering, our shelter, our protection. As a result, we worship Him. So He is who we worship. Our worship go to Him. Our praises go to Him. But in Psalm 105, He said, call upon the name of Yahweh. Praise the name of Yahweh. Worship in the name of Yahweh. So that's what we are doing. And we do it every day, all our life. Not just on the day of, Feast of Tabernacle. So Yahweh is who we worship and who will continue to worship with everything at our disposal, with our hands. Our hands is number one clapping instruments, or the 10 strings of, or 10 chords. They are in our hands. We use it to worship Him, to celebrate Him, to sing choruses, sing praises, do all we do in worship. We're told that the best way to pray is to praise Yahweh. Rejoice in songs, in psalms, in music that chorus praises of Yahweh. So Yahweh is worship, no more, no less. So on your own, find time to read that particular Psalm 118. Very, very interesting. It offers powerful message to what we are doing today. But going further, yesterday we read, or day before yesterday, rather, we read some portions of the book of prophets that reminded us about our restoration. And we carried it on through yesterday. Jeremiah 31, Ezekiel 20, 30, 33 to 45, Ezekiel 37, 1 to 14. Therefore, yesterday we particularly x-rayed what was in there. Zechariah 14. What we didn't quite touch was Ezekiel 20, 33 to 45, which informed us that Israelites shall be saved. And in fact, Ezekiel 20 corresponds on the Israelites being taken away into the wilderness. Israel being taken away into the wilderness. And Yahweh told us clearly that not all Israelites, or those who profess to be Israelites, will be saved. Majority of them will be cut off, particularly those who never knew his name, or who knew his name, or who would have followed worship, served him by his name, but they refused to do so. Hosea chapter 2, 16 and 17 did say that he will take them into the wilderness. There he will purge away, he will terminate from their mouth those who still go after the name of Baal. But would it be easy for them? That means many will die. So Ezekiel 20, 33 to 40 or to 45 did tell us that Yahweh will literally kill many who will be messing up, particularly in his name, because the issue of his name and Sabbath is going to be a very big issue. They will disagree with the leaders. Israelites will disagree with their leaders. The leaders who want to be telling them the right way, they would say no. It happened in the wilderness. So, both Revelation chapter 12 and Ezekiel 20, 33 to 40, 45 was pointing this out, including Hosea chapter 2, 16 and 17. First, Hosea chapter 2, from 1 to 17, was pointing this out. How Israelites are going to go into wilderness, and the experience is going to be nasty. It's not going to be hurry. It's not going to be blessing, jolly. No. Yahweh is going to use iron hand to weed away the disobedient, those who are not agreeing with him, because they will confront leaders. They will confront those who are leading them. They will query most of the things that Yahweh, asks them to be doing. They will query their leaders, and by querying their leaders, that will be querying Yahweh, and that will be the provocation of Yahweh's anger. Let's look at Sukkot as festival of shelter, festival of living in tents or booths, as a memorial forever. Let's look at it in terms of special service, a time of special service, a time of giving gifts. What did Yahweh say? Even as we rejoice before him, we celebrate him, Yahweh made specific requests and gave it to us as instruction. Leviticus 23 from 33. Yahweh said to Moses, give the following instructions to the people of Israel on the first day, which we started on the 15th day of Tishrei, which was on the 10th evening through 11th. On the first day of the appointed month in early autumn, You are to observe a day of complete rest. I'm reading from New Living Translation. It will be an official day for Holy Assembly, a day commemorated with loud blast of a trumpet. Sorry, I'm reading a different place. Somebody should have given me a warning. All right. Verse 33. I was into 23 instead of reading 33. Leviticus 23, 33. And Yahweh said to Moses, give the following instructions to the people of Israel. Begin celebrating the festival of shelters on the 15th day of the appointed month, 5 days after the day of atonement. This festival to Yahweh will last for 7 days. On the first day of the festival, you must proclaim an official day for holy assembly. So Yahweh says, take off or stay out of work and occupy yourself with, attending to this feast, which is a day of service, a day of convocating, a day of meeting, gathering, assembling before him. This festival to Yahweh will last for 7 days. On the first day of the festival, you must proclaim an official day for holy assembly when you do no ordinary work. For 7 days, you must present special gifts to Yah. The 8th day is another holy day on which you present your special gifts to Yahweh. This will be solemn occasion, and no ordinary work may be done that day. So 2 Sabbaths there, you must present special gifts. So many offerings, so many burnt offerings, peace offerings, grain offerings, sin offerings, all those offerings, that they perform in a way of sacrifice. The priest, the high priest, they will be at work, in a time like this in the ancient Israel. But Yahshua had made it so simple to us that all those, burnt sinful sins or offerings and so on that go through sacrifice with bulls, with goats, with sheep, with whatever animal, he made it easy by doing that with his own body, presented his body as a living sacrifice. And today, by believing in him, we are saved from the power of sin, that deliver from power of sin. It has to be a continuous faith in him, walking with him, trusting him, believing him, doing what he asks us to do, so that our deliverance will be permanent, so that in the day of restoration, salvation of Israel, we will not be checked out, because the roll call, the book of life is opened in heaven in time like this. So Yahshua, the one and only one that atonement rests in his hands, because he was everything foreshadowed towards his coming to take over. So when he presents the book before the Father, is your name going to be there continually? So he asks us to keep on in what we are doing in the faithful way until he returns with the kingdom. 37. These are Yahweh's appointed festivals. Celebrate them each year as official days for holy assembly by presenting special gifts to Yahweh, burnt offerings, grain offerings, sacrifices, and liquid offerings, each on its proper day. So all these, the priest would in those days apportion them, the one, what they are going to do, the two, they schedule, their plan, how they are going to do it, and the priests and the high priest will take their turn, each person to do his own, service or his own assignment based on his own schedule when he's appointed to do his own turn. 38. These festivals must be observed in addition to Yahweh's regular Sabbath days. So it's not only the two annual Sabbaths, the beginning of the feast and the last day of the feast. It must also integrate the regular Sabbath days. Very, very important. So in these 8 days of the Feast of Tabernacle and the last great day, we have 3 Sabbaths, 2 annual Sabbaths and 1 regular Sabbath. Tomorrow we are going to have the 1 regular Sabbath, which is Shabbat. So tomorrow is Shabbat day, which is what Yahweh is pointing out here. We should celebrate it as our normal Shabbat day. So in the midst of this feast. And the offerings are in addition to your personal gifts. The offerings you give to fulfill your vows and the voluntary offerings you present to Yahweh. Of all that you are giving to Yahweh throughout the year, you must have looked back. You must have looked how gracious, how faithful, how merciful, how kind Yahweh has been to you. And you vow, you make a vow. So whatever vow you made within the year, within the time, this is the time to present it to Yahweh. You have to point it out because it's still relevant, it's still part of this gathering, this Feast of Shelter. 39. Remember that this 7-day festival to Yahweh, the Festival of Shelters, begins on the 15th day of the appointed month. Trying to remind us again. After you have harvested all the produce of the land. So this is the last harvesting of the produce in the land, the ancient of Israel. Even in our lands, so to speak, if we are to follow in the Gentile world, if they are to follow the culture of Yahweh, the festival of Yahweh, we should by now taking care of our harvest or whatever harvest. In Africa, for instance, from the part of Africa I come from, this particular time and season is when they, undertake their last harvest, the final harvest of the year. So this time, Yahweh understands what he's talking about, that indeed, whether in the Middle East, whether in fact, the world over, people should look at their harvesting, seeing this time as the last time or period. They have to gather all that they have to pull out from the farm and store them properly, getting ready for the next season. The first day and the 8th day, the 80th day of the festival will be days of complete rest. So that last day is also annual Sabbath. You have to rest in it. That means no work. On the first day, gather branches from magnificent trees. Here he's telling us what we are going to do. And this also was spelled out in Nehemiah chapter 8. When they returned from Babylon, the leaders, Ezra, Nehemiah, prompted them to gather all the branches of trees, and they use it to make shelter. Even in the house, if it is a house, what they were doing, most of them do not produce this, and they use all those branches of trees to decorate their house. It will look as if it is shelter. But then Yahweh say, go out to do it. And as it were, the commandment was, you will go and do it where Yahweh choose. And to Israelites, when Yahweh say where he choose, is always Jerusalem. And in Jerusalem is within the area of the temple and all that. So, but what about the children of Israelites that are scattered all over the world? Are they in Israel now? What would they be doing? Yes, if we can afford it, because it's like the law of the priesthood, which is temporarily removed, which is temporarily resting in the hands of Yeshua. So nobody assumes that, no human being assumes that office except Yeshua himself. So we don't do or go into the nitty-gritties of the priestly work, particularly the area of sacrifice. That was taken upon, by Yeshua himself. Now here, because it still has to do with the elements that has to do with, the service of Sukkot. What the Gentiles, because there are certain things Israelites that are living in the land of Gentiles are not supposed to be doing. I believe, if anybody has better understanding or have read something that I have not catch up with, can call my attention. I would like to see that. I believe that in the Gentile world where Israelites are all over the world today, the Feast of Tabernacle, the Feast of Shelter, is not a strict commandment that those in diaspora should go after the prescription, because Yahweh was specific in mentioning the type of leaf, the branch of leaf trees that should be used. He was specific. What of if somebody argues that, you can do that in the Gentile world? Yes, we can do that if you can, and if you are living in an environment where you can afford this, because Yahweh is specific. When he's giving instruction, he must go after a particular thing he mentioned or he points out. Don't do it your own way. Here in the book of Leviticus 23, we see about 4 different leafy trees that should be used. In Nehemiah chapter 8, they gathered up to 5 leafy trees. 4 here, 5 here. Why? Those priests added. Did Yahweh ask them to add? So Yahweh didn't take it offense against them on that. So they added. It's literally is their time to rejoice, whatever they were doing, but they must do it in accordance to the word of Yahweh and to the glory of Yahweh. So you see differences. But then, what of if in your area you can only see 3 leaves, leafy trees, or branches of, branches of tree for you to use as shelter? What of if it's only 2 or 3? What about if you don't find at all? How will you do it? Because it has to do with this living tree. Is it tent? Why did he talk about tent? Is it using modern kind of something for tent or shelter? No, Yahweh was talking about leaves from the tree and a particular type of tree. So you find out, because all these were common in Israel at that time. I'm not saying if we can afford it in the Gentile world, we cannot go, use that. I can't rewrite what Yahweh said, but I believe that where you cannot afford it, wherever you are and celebrate this feast, provided you are doing it as a worship to Yahweh, as a service to Yahweh. In the Gentile world, that is okay. But when Israel returned to their land, where the temple will be there, the land will be there, and all these prescribed living trees are there. I mean, you can't go contrary to that. Because in the Gentile world, today, some people will tell you, we don't even know, even these leaves you are talking about, we don't know them. Some people will tell you they are not even available. Some people will tell you, I can't even obtain it because before you go and cut those leaves, you have to take permission from government. And I don't think that Yahweh was giving this order or commandment that you should go out to government to ask for permission or leave to go in to cut, and you have to pay certain amount of money for government to give approval and all that. By the time you go, I don't think that is something that Yahweh has commanded us to go and seek permission or approval, or when we want to do this kind of worship. If you look at the thinking of Yeshua and how Yeshua ran his ministry, Yeshua had no business with government of the day. Throughout the 3.5 years, he had his ministry with the disciples. Even his Jewish brethren wasn't taking permission from them to do anything. So he wouldn't want us to do it as a burden. That is the point I'm trying to make here. Because anything that will create burden to us, trying to hold any of the feasts, that wouldn't go well. Even in the days of Israelites, when they had to get animal, if any family cannot afford a sheep or a goat or bull, they should liaise with other families. They should share the money, buy the goat. Or if you don't even have the something, you can raise the money, you can use the money to do your celebration, whichever way. So just wanted to point out that verse because somebody might be querying, but why are you in the house celebrating this and all that? You can, if you can afford and can get all the living something, make the tree something. Would it be a particular type of living tree that Yahweh commands? I believe that we do what Yahweh says, because that is the instruction given to Moses. Do it as I command you. Follow my instruction. That is what Yahweh brings in the head of every believer. Now, what are these living trees? It says, verse 40 there, on the first day, gather branches from magnificent trees, palm fronds, boughs from living trees, and willows that grow by the streams. Then celebrate with joy before Yahweh your Father for 7 days. You must observe this festival to Yahweh for 7 days every year. This is a permanent law for you. Permanent. This is something that has to be from generation to generation. It has to be a memorial. service, something that you need to do once a year. You should not skip. No excuses for celebrating. It's for the reasons are obvious. Remember, we are pilgrims. We should be thinking as pilgrims. We are not in the land yet. We are not in that permanent land. It began when they were coming out from Egypt, when they lived, because Yahweh used it to showcase to Israel that your fathers lived as pilgrims, lived as people who are on the temporary journey, who are passerby, thank you, who are, moving or going somewhere. So it becomes a law to remind Israel, keep reminding Israel about their past, about their present. Present will help you to look at what the government of the day, the people of the day is doing. What is their thinking towards you, Israel? That calls in from Psalm 118 again. They don't like you. They don't love you. So you put your ears down. Put your eyes out there. Watch and you pray. This is a permanent law for you, and it must be observed in the appointed month from generation to generation. For 7 days, you must live outside in little shelters. All native-born Israelites must live in shelters. All must live in shelters. So during this particular time, all Israelites has to go into shelters and stay there for 7 days. This will remind each new generation of Israelites that I made their ancestors live in shelters when I rescued them from the land of Egypt. I am Yahweh your Father. Memorial. This has to keep on reminding us how Yahweh led our ancestors, helped them when were living in shanty, makeshift shelter. And the sense there is that Yahweh was their protection even when they were living as, that uncomfortable life. Yahweh was their protection. 44. So Moses gave the Israelites these instructions regarding the annual festivals of Yahweh. So this is what this feast demands from us. All those instructions must be followed according to the commandments of Yahweh. Has he stopped? The important thing to note there is that this feast is a continual, feast that we need to celebrate year in, year out. We don't need to stop it. Don't need to arrogate it to the Jews. We don't need to say it is Israelites or something of the ancient that has stopped. No. This is a commandment. Because Yeshua celebrated it. The Jews celebrated it in the days of Yeshua. John chapter 7, John chapter 8 was clear. And Yeshua, as he also showcased what was done at that time, teaching. He taught them at that particular time. So this is import of this gathering to remind us about our past, about our present, and about our future. Sukkot, this particular feast, is third appointed time of gathering in unity of the children of Yahweh. But you say, Israelites all over the world today, are they united in this feast? But if you know and you're obedient, you must keep this feast. Even if you're alone, Even if you are just a family, you have to keep it. The family has to keep it. The community has to keep it. The people of Yahweh, wherever they find themselves, irrespective of the fact that they are scattered everywhere. Maybe they don't know where they are. They are not collectively together as they would have been collectively celebrating it when they are in Israel. Because in the ancient time of Israel, they will gather in Jerusalem for this feast. And that is what Zechariah reported. Zechariah said, when Israelites are restored and they go back to the land, they will be celebrating it together as a united people, as a unified people. So it's no longer going to be, disjointed people doing it in their own areas, in their own places and all that. No. It has to be at a particular where the choice of Yahweh is, which is Jerusalem, or around Jerusalem, or within the Judea. So that's why he said in Zechariah that nations will travel, will move from one country to the other. Egypt will go. Nations of the world will go. Any nation that will not submit themselves or go for the feast will be in trouble. There will be scarcity of food. There will be no rain to produce food for them. So there will be hunger in the land. Nehemiah 8. Nehemiah chapter 8, 1 to 11. Let's quickly go there. And that, recalls what transpired when Israelites, the tribe of Judah, came back from their exile. And at that time, it was a difficult thing because they even didn't know, they didn't even remember again that there was such feast. And you see how long Israelites lived without celebrating the feast of Sukkot. Years. From the time of Joshua, we are told, Israelites left celebrating this feast. A good thing that Ezra, Nehemiah, and all the like, particularly Josiah, they were able to find the Torah, the book of law. And that was what helped them, it helped them to reinstitute this festival again, or this cultural life again. Let's look at Nehemiah chapter 8, I read from verse 1. In October, when the Israelites had settled in their towns, I'm reading New Living Translation. New Living Translation draws close to the language of Hebrew, to the timing of Hebrew. My interaction with New Living Translation in recent time, look at how they, pointed out the month, October. This October time, in the time of Israel, or for the time of Israel, it is Tishri, which is the 7th month. So they call it the 7th month. But then, October is the time. Between September and October is when trumpet, atonement, and Tabernacle is celebrated. So the pointing of the time is correct here. And also, New Living Translation argued on its own that the name of Yahweh is not God, that it was changed. In part of their comments, that is what, they told us. And they're excellently true. You can't see that in King James. King James insists in Lord God and all that. But they tell us, New Living Translation, tell us the correct name of our Father, that it is Yahweh. Let's continue from verse 1 there. In October, when the Israelites had settled in their towns, all the people assembled with a unified purpose. In unity, they have to gather, united, at the square just inside the water gate. See where they gather. They asked Ezra, the scribe, to bring out the book of the law of Moses, which Yahweh had given for Israel to obey. This law was founded by Josiah. So Ezra is like a custodian. Ezra was acting as a priest as well, but he was mainly a scribe, one that is, in custody of Torah. There are people that has to do with the writings, anything that has to do with scripts of the scripture. Ezra was amongst them. They are writers. They are called scribes. So he was asked to bring what this book of Moshe, which is the book of law, the Torah, as was given to them to obey. So on October 8th, Ezra the priest brought the book of Torah before the assembly, which included the men and women and all the children old enough to understand. He faced the square just inside the water gate from early morning until noon and read aloud to everyone who would understand. All the people listened closely to the book of Torah, the book of law. Ezra the scribe stood on a high wood platform that had been made for an occasion. To his right stood Matithiah, Shema, Ananiah, Uriah, Hilkiah, and Messiah. To his left stood Pedaiah, Mishael, Malkijah, Hashum, Hashbadana, Zechariah, and Meshullam. Ezra stood on the platform in full view of all the people. When they saw him open the book, they all rose to their feet. Why did they rise to their feet? Now, Torah, or what we call Bible today, is a holy book. It's the word of Yahweh. It's the spirit. It has the spirit of Yahweh in it. Torah is Yahweh himself. Remember, we are told that Yeshua is the word of Yahweh. So many people abuse the scriptures, the Bible they have in their hands. They will take cup of their water or even their drink and leave it on top of Bible. Or they place it anyhow, or they keep it anyhow. This book is held in sacredness. The Jews or Israelites hold it or keep it as a holy, most precious, more than you can keep gold. They cherish it. When they lift it, before the high priest will begin to do anything, they will celebrate it before they even open to read. That is as far as they can go in this book, because it's the word of Yahweh. Is the spirit of Yahweh. Is intent and purposes of Yahweh to his people. So they rejoice before they begin to do anything or read it or speak from there. Then Ezra praised Yahweh, the great Yahweh, and all the people chanted, Amen. You see what they did? As Ezra brought the book, they opened the book, the people stood on their feet, And they did what? They praised Yahweh. They rejoiced before Yahweh. They gave him thanks. They celebrate the word of Yahweh. The word of Yahweh is celebrated. Verse 8. Amen. As they lifted their hands, then they bowed down and worshipped Yahweh with their faces to the ground. This is even before they begin to read from the verse 8. I just finished reading. Okay, sorry. Yeah, it's verse 6. I read that is a tag there that looks like 8. Sorry there. Right. What they did there was to rejoice before Yahweh, give him the glory due to him. It is the reading of his, and the priest does it every time. The high priest does it every time. Each time they gather, that to open the Torah. That was, the culture. Now, then they bow down and worshipped Yahweh with their faces to the ground. The Levites, Jeshua, Bani, Sherebiah, Jamin, Akub, Shebetai, Hodiah, Maaseiah, Kalita, Azariah, Jozabad, Hanan, and Peleah then instructed the people in the law, while everyone remained in their places. They read from the book of the law of Yahweh and clearly explained the meaning of what was being read, helping the people understand each passage. Then Nehemiah the governor, Ezra the priest and scribe. So Ezra was a priest as well as scribe. Nehemiah was the governor. He was in charge of the land at that time. And the Levites who were interpreting for the people said to them, "Don't mourn or weep on such a day as this, for today is a sacred day before Yahweh your Father." For the people had all been weeping as they listened to the words of the law, the words of the Torah, the words of the covenant book. Why were they weeping? They didn't understand that what the content, the instruction given. For instance, the feast of Yahweh, they were to celebrate them, particularly this feast of Tabernacle. They had left it for long. Listen to him. And Nehemiah continued, "Go and celebrate with a feast of rich foods and sweet drinks, and share gifts of food with people who have nothing prepared. This is a sacred day before our Yah. Don't be dejected and sad, for the joy of Yahweh is your strength." And the Levites too quieted the people, telling them, "Hush, stop weeping, don't weep, for this is a sacred day." So the people went away to eat and drink at a festive meal, to share gifts of food, and to celebrate with great joy, because they had heard Yahweh's words and understood them. Now, going forward, let's take it up to verse 18. You will capture why the people were weeping. Why, the gathering that was a gathering of joy turned to a moment of weeping. On October 9, this is the following day, the family leaders of all the people, together with the priests and the Levites, met with Ezra, the scribe, to go over the law in greater detail. They have to do in-depth study now to understand what was written, including the book of Leviticus 23 that provided all the feasts and so on. Now they will stumble at where they have fallen. As they studied the law, they discovered that Yahweh had commanded through Moses that the Israelites should live in shelters during the festival to be held that month. So they have not been doing this. They have not been organizing shelter. They have not been celebrating the feast. So this was a major discovery, a major find out. He had said that a proclamation should be made throughout their towns and in Jerusalem, telling the people to go to the hills to get branches from olive. Now look at when they discovered about the tabernacle, celebration of the Feast of Tabernacle, they had to go to the hills to get what? Olive branches, white olive, myrtle, palm, and other leafy trees. When you just count it, palm of olive, white olive, 2 there, myrtle, 3 there, palm, 4 there, and other leafy trees. So they gathered even more than beyond even 4, 5, beyond 5, because say other leafy trees. So other trees were inclusive. Now, would we take any tree we want? Because Yahweh was specific in Leviticus 23. Well, here, let us assume that they have about 5. Whatever it is, what is important is for you to keep this memorial. That is what is important. And in the Gentile world where we are today, keep it. Whether you find the living trees or not, keep it. Whether you prepare the shelter, keep it. They were to use these branches to make shelters in which they would live during the festival as prescribed in the Torah. So the people went out and cut branches and used them to build shelters on the roofs of their houses, in their courtyards, in the courtyards of Yahweh's temple, or in the squares just inside the water gate and the Ephraim gate. So everyone who had returned from captivity lived in shelter in these shelters during the festival, and they were all filled with great joy. The Israelites had not celebrated like this since the days of Joshua, son of Nun. Have you seen it? They rejoiced. The joy was extraordinary because this thing had been forgotten. If you look at the book of Judges, after the death of Joshua, the Bible said Israelites, it's like they scattered and everybody was doing his own thing from his own head. Everybody walked away. They were not careful to follow the Torah again. People were reasoning, doing things based on their own wisdom, on their own mindset. What they think, what they feel, is the right way to go. In their own eyes, in their own mind. So that was what happened to them. Joshua chapter 24 did talk about, he warned them, do not scatter. In fact, he told them that they are not going to serve Yahweh. And that was what happened. From that time to the point they went to Babylon, because not serving Yahweh was the reason they went to Babylon. And when they returned, after some years, they discovered that they had not been following the Torah, particularly the feasts. And the feast of shelter was left uncelebrated. And when they celebrated it, they were revived. Yahweh revived their spirit. Yahweh rekindled their love. Yahweh brought them back to where they're supposed to be, serving him, following him. They living as family, as united people. Because Yahweh will want Israel to be united. Today in the Gentile world, Israelites are scattered. Israelites are living in different places. They don't even know that they are Israelites. Many that are in Christianity are Israelites. Do they know? Many are in Islam are Israelites. Do they know? Judaism, those that practice Judaism, they are Israelites. Do they know? They do whatever they like. So those Judaizers or those practicing Judaism, they know somehow. They know that the Israelites are quite all right. But what was really commanded is not followed. That is a problem. To the point that Messiah came, they didn't know Messiah, and they are still looking for Messiah. What a blindness. Verse 18. Ezra read from the book of the law of Yah on each of the 7 days of the festival. Then on the 80th day, they held a solemn assembly as was required by law. So from the beginning of the first day to the 80th day, they concluded and they re-established the Feast of Tabernacle. This, we are looking at past, which is the reason Yahweh says you must keep this celebration so that you don't forget, so that you don't omit it, so that you don't, go living on your own and forget Yahweh who shelters you. He is our shelter. This feast reminds us that 24 hours Yahweh is our shelter wherever we are. Even outside the feast, when we finish the feast, going forward throughout the remaining part of the year of Israelites, Yahweh is their shelter. So this is like every human being looking for a cloth to wear. So Yahweh is our covering. He is our shelter. Festival of Shelter is time and moment of rejoicing. It's not time of weeping. You see how the priests, the governor, the Nehemiah, Ezra, the scribe, and the priest himself was calming the people, and the other priests calming down the priest. Why were they weeping? Torah was abandoned. The feast was abandoned, and on discovering it, everybody was weeping like a baby. If the people suddenly discovered, they were like people that were lost. They suddenly discovered, and they wept. And I believe by reason of weeping, they realize that leaving the word of Yahweh, leaving Torah and doing their own thing was the reason they went into exile. I realize here that the people may have said, we have sinned and went away, left Yahweh. As a result, they were like in the grave. They were dead people, because Yahweh would have cut them off. So because they saw they were alive, and this is the offense, they were weeping to Yahweh to have mercy. Yahweh, forgive us. We had done so many. And it was, did they celebrate trumpet, atonement? No, because at that time they never even discovered what they saw here. This was particularly at this time they discovered, and when they read through and they saw that Feast of Shelter was also part of what they do the last feast in the year, and it was almost during October like this, which is Tishri month, they saw this. Trumpet had gone, atonement had gone, and that was Feast of Shelter about to go, and this thing was exposed. They saw it, they cried, and immediately they entered into its celebration. So what it teaches us is that this is moment we cannot push away. We cannot say it is for the ancient people in the time of Ezra, time of Joshua, time of Moses. It's for us. Yahweh say, keep it. Now, that is past, something that happened in the past. What about present and the future? What does it suppose? It's supposing our salvation, because we must be careful so that we are not cut off. Now, Sukkot as past salvation we can see that as we look at the journey of Israel from Egypt through the wilderness. If you can cast your mind through the experiences and how the law was given to them, how the feast was given to them, research the Pentecost, the trumpet, to this feast of Tabernacle, and so on. We shall now, be in the mood to say, Yahweh, thank you, because this is your plan on how you want to save us, particularly because all is foreshadowing what is coming, the future, what is coming in the future. Yahweh is using all this to program our mind, our life, so that we tune ourselves to what is coming. We must watch, we must continue to pray, depending on Yahweh, following his instructions so that he will protect us. Because what is coming in the future is difficult it will be very, very difficult to handle. Bible said, eyes of man, ears of men have not seen or heard. It's going to be troubles. It is, when you read the book of Revelation, even the book of Daniel, it will tell you clearly that no human being on his own will overcome. But Yeshua said, in everything I will be with you, help you to overcome. So if you don't know how to associate, rely, trust, follow Yeshua, who gives us his spirit? His spirit is going to help us do it in these latter days. How will you overcome? How will you overcome? And the danger is that the world we are into is completely helping all unbelievers to be removed from what is commanded, from the instruction of Yahweh. The world helps us to distance ourselves from Yahweh's instruction, from following Yahweh, from being tabernacled by Yahweh. So that is a problem. Tomorrow we are going to look at, tomorrow is our regular Sabbath, Yahweh helping us. We are going to peep into what is happening in the present, why he's asking us watch and pray, so that we understand where we are now, what is happening, and what they are plotting. Plotters. The plotters. So tomorrow we're going to look at the issue that has to do with present. We have been dealing with the past. Look at the present and look at what is unfolding in the future. What the foreshadow of all this in the future. And that will help us to really understand what Yahweh is calling us to do. May Yahweh bless you. May Yahweh continue to strengthen you. May your heart be encouraged as the heart of Israelites were encouraged when the Torah was read, when they discovered what they were not doing. And at the end, though they were sorrowful, but they rejoiced before Yahweh. They celebrated him. They thanked him. And they kept on following him. May we not withdraw. May we not stay back. May we not be wishy-washy. May the world not cover us. Rather, may we be, covered by the arm of Yahweh. For he said, he will, even remove us in his two eagle's wings. He will carry us. By the time we read the book of Revelation chapter 12, we will understand that. Yahweh be with you and bless you and continue to keep you in Yeshua's name. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Let us pray and close for the day. Except you have a query or something new, because now we are closing.